Hello, welcome back to Black Book Stacks. I'm your host, Toshonda Sanders. What a long spring it has been. I hope that you are well. Welcome to my new subscribers. I'm so excited to have you here. I talk about books that I really like that happen to have been written by people who associate or affiliate themselves with the African diaspora and or the Black diaspora. Same thing to me, but some people make that distinction. And if you are not a subscriber, I would love to have you as one. So if you like what you see here, then please feel free to hit the subscribe button. I think if you hit the notification bell, then you'll be able to see the notification when I go live again, or if I ever go live, which I haven't thought about, but it might be a thing that y'all are into. And that's that. So one of my favorite reads so far this year was The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett, which I'm reviewing for the AV Club, and comes out June 2nd from Riverhead. I really liked The Mothers, which was Brit Bennett's first novel. And I am having that experience where if you read a lot, then it's hard to keep track of the plots or the once you've read it and it was a while ago. Sometimes all of the specifics of a book can go right out of your head, but because The Vanishing Half is fresh and it's her second book and it was so beautiful and lovely, I wanted to make sure that I captured it before I lost all of those details, because obviously, like most of you, I have a bunch of different books going on at the same time. So The Vanishing Half is the story of Desiree and Stella Vignes. I think that's how you say their last name. It's Vignes. And they are twins who are light-skinned, who grow up in the 50s and 60s in a little Louisiana town called Mallard. And the way that it's narrated is it interweaves different time periods and perspectives in a really seamless and lovely way. One of the twins, Stella, essentially goes missing when the twins have moved from Mallard as young women, I think teenagers, I believe, older teenagers, young adults. They move in together in New Orleans, and Stella just disappears. And this is a spoiler alert, I guess. The whole thing is a spoiler alert. You should read it and let me know what you think. But essentially, Stella goes missing. She passes for a white woman, so she goes to essentially hear, or she goes to, when she and Desiree are young, Desiree dares her sister to pretend to be white to see if it works, and she does that, and she tries, and it just so happens that no one people are tricked, and she's like, interesting, it's a possibility, right? And so she tries it again. She and Desiree are cleaning homes and doing domestic work, which was sort of par for the course at that time for Black women, even light-skinned Black women. And so she shows up when there's a company that's looking for secretaries, and when she gets off the elevator or gets on the floor, a white woman also just says, "Here, do you want this application?" And because she's mistaken for a white woman, she doesn't correct that mistake. She finds herself then kind of swept into this world where she has a boss, and she's kind of keeping Desiree apprised of the boss, and what's going on there. I'm not sure. I can't remember if she gives Desiree a lot of details about how she got hired or how she got this job. I think she does tell her a little bit, but she starts to keep more and more to herself. And then finally the boss, who is also in love with her, and they're gonna run away together, Stella just is out. Which, you know, I would say if there's anything that seems a little bit like, would it really go down like that? It's maybe that. But, you know, again, I mean, the prose and the craft that went into the narrative is such that, you know, if you have a question about it, I mean, it just kind of leaves you, because the way that the narrative is paced, the way that the characterization is introduced. You know, one of my favorite characters in the book is Early Jones. First of all, I love his name, but also he is a private investigator, or like he hunts people, right? So he finds people who don't want to be found, essentially. So Desiree, heartbroken, missing her sister, moves to DC. She becomes, I think, a stenographer, and or like a fingerprint person, and because she's in DC, she meets this really fly dude, and he becomes abusive, and she leaves him and returns to Mallard with her daughter, Jude, who's really dark-skinned, which is important for a number of reasons, but including the fact that in Mallard, everyone's light-skinned, and that's just kind of, you know, people think of it as this sort of high acidity, you know, situation, this place where you go. And obviously when she comes back with her daughter, it's clear that she was involved with someone who was much darker than her, and the colorism in our community is such that it's completely believable that people would be talking smack about her. And Early, who once upon a time had a big crush on Desiree, you know, has also been hired by her estranged husband to find her, and because he always had like a little candle lit for Desiree, he kind of like drops the whole situation, which is great. It's one of the nice sort of undertones of the book, a nice little love narrative. So, and I always love love stories, and there are a couple strong ones, you know, Jude and Reese, who has his own, you know, journey, that I think is really fascinating and well done and well put in the book. Jude, you know, ends up leaving Mallard. She's a runner, so shout out to the runners. Love a good running narrative. So Jude runs her way to a scholarship at UCLA, which is where she meets Reese. Stella is also in LA with her husband and her daughter, Kennedy, who is pretty annoying, I would say. I mean, you know, once you guys have a chance to read it, let me know what you think. But like, I thought she was really irritating, actually. Probably the most irritating character in the book. But Kennedy is wild and such an interesting character because she's part black, but she has no idea that her mother is black, right? Because Stella is still passing. And, you know, I loved the way that Brit Bennett wrote about, you know, the integration, very slow integration of some of the better neighborhoods in LA. When there's a black family that moves in, you know, Stella feels threatened. She's worried that her secret is going to come out, and all of the dynamics that Brit writes about there are also really amazing. So, yeah, I don't want to give too much away. I feel like I already said quite a lot. It's hard to assess a book without kind of giving away or explaining some of the plot. So hopefully I didn't do too much. I really love it because of its apolitical stance on passing, right? I think that in our day and age, we can say, you know, well, even if I could pass for white, I wouldn't want to sell out like that. You know, like, people make all kinds of judgments, but they don't know your life, right? Like, they don't know what it would be like to be oppressed in that specific way, and then maybe have an option to be free in a way that maybe not everyone has the same option. to do, right? So and that's sort of the main message of The Vanishing Half, or as I read it, one of the main messages is, you know, not necessarily judging Stella for what she's done, although obviously her choice has very long-reaching consequences, not just for her sister and her immediate family, but for her daughter, for her niece, right? Like you can make a decision to make yourself free or to get yourself free, but how does it end up then impacting the people in your life? And at the end of the day, is it worth it, right? Like, is it worth it for you to make that return on investment, I guess, calculation, right? Like, what are the long-term consequences for you and for others? And so I thought it was really an interesting thing to think about, to realize, you know, especially I think during this time in our world, to think about the consequences of a single person's decisions, which feel to them very personal. Obviously, each movement has a significant amount of weight. So all those things, really interesting to think about, really beautifully written. Such great characterization, such careful consideration of different identities as they are allowed to be revealed in the book. I know that sounds cryptic, but you know, thinking of one character in particular who, you know, in a modern sense, you know, we would say, oh, okay, like, duh, you know, but thinking about that character in the context of these times, I realize, you know, we're just reminded of the restrictions of the past, right? Like, sometimes when people talk about the good old days or when things were better, they don't really offer the add in or create all the calculations related to some of the really repressive aspects of our past, right? Both collectively and individually. So I love that that's captured here. I love Stella's arc. You know, I love that. You know, obviously I don't love that she suffers and is always like terrified that she's going to be discovered. But I appreciate the honesty with which her character is rendered, and sort of the objectivity. You know, I think one of the strongest points of Brit Bennett's novel, and why it's been, I think, there's so much buzz about it, why there's such anticipation for its release, is, you know, it really underscores how complex we are as human beings, and for Black women, just all of the different aspects of our humanity that we have to unpack in order to get free, right? It's not just, okay, how is this going to affect me in the long run? What is in it for me personally? But it's also like, well, I fit a specific role in my community, and if I decide that I want to be free of that role, then what will happen to me? What will become of my life? And can I live with that? You know, and the last part of that sounds so simple, but it's so hard. Can I live with that? And sometimes the answer is you can, but it's gonna be rough. You know, like, yes, you can live with it. It's not maybe a dream life. It's a life that's gonna still be fraught. Do you want this kind of angst, or do you want this other kind of angst, right? So it's kind of a really juicy summer novel. I hope that if you decide to read it, you'll let me know what you think in the comments. I really enjoyed the whole experience. It was really hard to put down. It is, I believe, the definition of a page turner, and I'm excited to see what other people think about it. So I hope that you'll check out The Vanishing Half. Let me know what you think if you do, and thanks again so much for watching. I will see you again sometime soon.